welcome to the Empowered Podcast. Today I'm here with Askin, a professional volleyball player and diabetes advocate. I'm so excited to have her on because I grew up playing volleyball with her and she was such an inspiration and always a joy, so I'm so glad that you guys get to hear her story as well. I heard that you had diabetes since you were about 7, so how did that come about and how did your family adapt to that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 7 years old, super young, big life-changing moment for the whole family. But basically what happened is, it's Christmas time, people get the flu, people get sick, and usually, you get it for a week or so, passes through you, you're good. So what happened was I was the first person in my family to get sick during flu season, and then I just never got better. And, when we have a big family, so I have 3 siblings, family of 6, and so, my mom's kind of like, well, Ashley's not getting better, blah, blah, blah,
so
whatever.
Everyone else was getting better, and then you just continued to be sick?
Yeah, okay. But it's easy when, you have a lot of siblings to kind of be like, she'll be, whatever.
Right.
So, I started getting really skinny. I couldn't keep food down. I was peeing all the time. I was really thirsty, and my mom looked at me one day and was just like, there's something seriously wrong. We need to go to the doctor. And we went to the doctor. He had one look at me and literally put me in an ambulance. He's like, we need to get her to the hospital right away.
Did he know what was wrong?
That part's a little foggy. I think he may have given me a blood test, but from what I remember, it was literally he looked at me and was like, we got to go to the hospital.
Wow.
Which was so scary too, because at 7 years old, they literally strapped me to this thing, put me in a stretcher, put me in an ambulance, and no one could come with me. I think my older sister was able to come in the ambulance, but in the front where they drive.
Yes.
And so I'm strapped to this bed, 7 years old, whisked away in an ambulance. My mom's not with me. I don't know what's going on. I'm just laying there crying, what's going on? It's so scary. Yeah. And then we get to the hospital, and again, I'm by myself. I don't know what's going on. I'm still strapped to this bed, and they're just trying to put IVs in me. So they're stabbing me and stabbing me and stabbing me, because what happens is you get so dehydrated that your veins just kind of shrivel up and roll over. And so trying to get an IV was super tough. And I remember I ended up having 8 IVs. There's one here, one here, one here, and everywhere. And they were stabbing me, and I'm crying and don't know what's going on. And I remember passing out, and when I woke up, it was my whole family was there, and they're kind of explaining things to my mom, and I'm just trying to figure out, am I okay? Am I going to survive? What's going on? So, that's my diagnosis story, and kind of
So did you wake up and then you just saw all these bags of fluid going into you?
Yeah, I just remember waking up and kind of just being kind of relieved that I'm still here.
Right.
Because, you just don't know what's going on. It's so crazy. And then just wondering why I'm still stuck to this bed, but really it's, I'm stuck to these IVs now, and I don't really know what it is. And I remember them saying you're going to be okay. You just have diabetes. But when you're 7, you don't know what that word means, and all I heard was die. And so for literally the first 2 months when I was at home, I was basically on bed rest. I couldn't go back to school for a little bit because it's a learning process.
Yeah.
And that whole period, I thought I was dying because it was diabetes, and I'm just and we had this nurse that would come home. I know. Yeah. And she would come home and stay with us. And I remember I was sitting there watching TV one day, and she was like, how are you doing, Ash? What's going on with you? You know you're going to be okay. And I just remember just starting to cry and be like, I'm dying. I'm not going to see my friends at school, and da-da-da-da. And she's like, no, baby, you're not dying. You have diabetes. This is something you're going to have your whole life, and you're going to be fine with it. But you're not dying. And that was the first moment where I was I could take a breath, and it's you're going to be okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So is that how, I don't know much about diabetes besides what I've researched for this interview. Do people get it different ways? Do most people have a traumatic experience and then they're like, oh, that's why? Or are they kind of known a while before they start getting symptoms?
Yeah, so there's 2 different types. I have type 1 diabetes, also known as juvenile diabetes, which you do typically get it as a little kid. I have friends who've gotten it as early as 12 months, so it depends on that. But also, so type 2 is it's what people typically think of when they think of diabetes. Don't eat sugar, watch your weight, all that stuff. They kind of group all of diabetes in that one bubble, but Type 2 is more hereditary. It is more of like lifestyle choices, whereas type 1 is an autoimmune disease. So it's not something that I asked for. It's not, they don't even really know what the cause of it is. They just know that your body just decides one day to attack itself, and basically what it does is it kills all the beta cells off of your pancreas, and the beta cells are in charge of making insulin, and you need insulin to break down the food, the sugar in your bloodstream, so it's super, super important. And so what happens is all those beta cells go away, you are no longer creating insulin, and that's why, you know, you get thirsty and you are peeing all the time and stuff, because your body doesn't have a way to get rid of the sugar in your bloodstream, and so your body's like fighting, like, how do we get this out? How do we get this out? So it's, you know, just trying to pee it out, and like that's where you think of like, you hear like ketones or ketosis and stuff like that. So what happens is your body goes into ketoacidosis, where it's desperately trying to get the sugar out of your body, and you're peeing out the sugar, and basically it kind of like eats your muscle and fat and stuff, trying to like get rid of.
So that's why you lost so much weight.
Yeah, and that's why I couldn't keep food down, because my body's just like rejecting everything. So
pretty much when people have type 1 diabetes, they kind of go through, it's almost like a traumatic experience.
Yeah, it is, because it is really life and death. Like without insulin, you will die. Like if I go a day without insulin, I'll die. Like I can't. So and that's where like back in the day they used to call us sugar babies, because like you can't have sugar, but also like back in the day it was a death sentence. Like without insulin, like if you had diabetes, like you just died. There wasn't even care for it. So
wasn't insulin the drug that like a while back like spiked up in price or something?
Yes. So here in the States, it's crazy. So again, it's a drug that like you absolutely need, no questions asked, to live. Like you don't even think about insulin because your body produces it, but like my body doesn't. And it's a drug that takes, I think, like $5 to manufacture and create, and the patent was sold for $1 because it's such a life, like you need it to live. And what's happened is here in the States, they jacked up the prices, and like people now in today's time are dying every single day because they can't afford the price of insulin.
So how much is it? Like, I don't know the price.
It depends for each person. So for me personally, it's $130 each month for my insulin.
Oh my god.
Which is a lot of money, you know?
Is that with insurance too?
Yes, that's with insurance.
So people that pretty much aren't on insurance are screwed.
Yeah. And I remember like my freshman year of college, you know, when you first get there and like it's your first time truly being on your own. And like back in high school and grade school, like all growing up, that was never really anything that I thought about, like how much was my diabetes. Because in my head, I don't know, I never really thought about like how much does it really cost for me to live with this disease. And I remember my freshman year of college, the first time going to the pharmacy to pick up my insulin, for whatever reason, they didn't have my insurance information, and the guy was like $730. And I just like, I remember I was like standing there frozen, like, I don't have $730 to give you to get the insulin that I need to live. Like, I just remember being shocked and like standing there frozen, like, what do? I'm alone in Atlanta. Like, what do I do?
Oh my god.
I remember getting on the phone with my mom, like crying, like, Mom, I don't know what to do. Like, my insulin is this much money. And she's like, no, like, don't worry, And like, she was able to like talk me through it. But that was my example. And again, that was 6 years ago. So I'm sure prices have been, you know, upwards of $1,000.
Yeah.
So.
That's insane. Like, I can't even imagine being in a family that doesn't have insurance or having like a big family. That's insane. And so let's go back to volleyball. So you played at Georgia Tech. So what was being an athlete and having type 1 diabetes like? Were you always checking your insulin levels, or how did you manage to continue playing your sport and be active?
So one of the good things for me growing up is like I come from a very, very active family. My mom played basketball at Notre Dame. My dad played football at Notre Dame. All my siblings played sports. Like we are very like active, competitive, like sport family. And so that was good because growing up, you know, that's just what I did. So I always had to manage it. And like basketball was my big love. All like growing up, my mom used to coach me and stuff like that. And so like I've always kind of been in different competitive situations, different kind of workouts and stuff like that. And I'm also really lucky because my mom like right away was on it. Like, because diabetes is something that like the people who are you're closest with, like the way your doctor talks to you about it and the way your parents talk to you about it, especially at such a young age, is so foundational to how you are going to live with it and how successful you're going to be with it, because she took it so serious. Like, I remember I'm 7 years old with type 1 diabetes, learning to count carbs, learning to count sugar, learning to read a nutrition label, and like I knew ratios and fractions before we were even taught that in school, because like I had to count the carbs on all of my lunches and snacks and be like, okay, this is 20 carbs, I need 2 units of insulin. Oh, but my blood sugar is this, so I need to add this much more insulin. So like growing up, I was always very, very diligent about what I was putting into my body and how to calculate those things, and also just like not making it an option, because sometimes you can get lazy and be like, oh, I can eat this and be fine. Like, that was not an option for me. I was 7 and my mom was like, if you do this, if you eat this, you got to do this.
Right.
And like, there's people who have been diagnosed who don't have a family that takes it as serious, or maybe has a doctor that didn't explain it to them as serious as mine did, so I'm very thankful for that. But I do give a lot of credit to my family and support system, because I don't think I would have taken it as serious if it wasn't.
So do you have any advice for someone who might be a mom or might be like a sibling who has somebody in their family with type 1 diabetes?
I would say, number 1, support them and let them know that it's going to be okay. But 2, like, keep them accountable and like it is a serious disease, and I mean, I could die tomorrow if I did something wrong, like, it's something that you can't take lightly. And I think it's so good to keep your kids active and put them in sports and stuff like that, because not only that, it just shows that like you can do so much more despite this. It is really serious, but if you handle it well, you can do whatever you want.
Like, you can be a pro athlete.
And so that's what I would say. But also, there's a whole like mental side of diabetes as well, because it's like, you look at the person and you'd never look at me and be like, oh, she has diabetes, she has this disease that she's gonna have her whole life. Like, the way it's an invisible disease, because it's like you see the person and they look so happy and healthy, and like you don't know what's really going on. So I would say, like, support them and give them love, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes and like behind what and like even when my blood sugar goes high or when it goes low, like I have different feelings and symptoms for each thing. And I remember literally last week, me, my mom, and Jacqueline, we were playing a board game, and I get competitive, and that's just how I am. And,
I feel you.
And so we're playing, and I'm competitive, but my blood sugar was spiking up, so I was about like 400, and like that's not good.
So what is on the scale? Like, what's good, what's bad?
So your blood sugar is probably around 100 all the time. Like 100 is normal. For me, I say anything below 80 is a low blood sugar, and that means I need to have sugar, I need to have some protein to keep my blood stable. And then anything above 180 is high.
Oh, wow.
And so 400 is like,
that's high.
Girl, you need to drink some water, you need a shot, you need to like rest. But we were playing this game, my blood sugar shot up to 400, and I didn't feel good. And I just was getting so competitive and angry, and I just started crying. Like, that's one of the things, is like I get really angry and like moody and like will cry depending on like what my blood sugar is. So that's something to keep in mind too, because even though you're looking at me and you're like, she's getting all worked up about a game, but it's like, okay, what's her blood sugar, what's going on? But so
does it like inflect dopamine, or like does it, I don't know, does that make sense?
So hormone or
hormone?
Insulin is a hormone in itself. So that, I don't really know the answer to that question. But I mean, they all play together. So I'm sure it plays a part in all of that. But one thing that's kind of really helped me is like, I'm a very like positive, optimistic person. Because
so positive. Like literally the nicest, most happy-go-lucky person.
But I think also that's kind of like, that's kind of a mechanism that like I need to survive, because like if I look at this in a negative way, how am I gonna thrive and like live? Because it's not something that you can just be like, I'm gonna do really well with this today and then tomorrow take a break. Like, you have to like constantly be like, hey, you got this, But also it kind of helps level my blood sugars, because I know that like when I'm sad or when I'm mad, like all those things affect my blood sugar, which is crazy.
Wow, that is. So how was it going into college? Like, were your coaches cautious of you being a type 1 diabetic, or how did they also, and the girls on your team, like, did you have to kind of educate them about what was going on?
Yeah, so going into college, I was recruited by Tanya Johnson, who's now one of the head coaches at Texas.
Okay.
So I had a coaching change going into college. So I remember I signed my senior fall of high school, and then it wasn't until like the winter, I think, when my coach called me and was like, hey, I got a coaching position at Texas, I'm going to be leaving. And so
dang, that is the worst.
I know, and I committed as a sophomore too, so I already had this relationship with this coach, and you know, she knew me through and through. She knew my diabetes, like,
oh my God.
So I felt really safe going to Georgia Tech in that respect. But then getting that thrown on the end of my senior year when I already signed, and you know, there's the option to change and stuff like that, but I've been committed since I was a sophomore.
You were excited, like that's where you wanted to go.
So I went to Georgia Tech still because I was like, this is the school I want to go to, this is the education I want, this is the city I want to be in, like all the things checked the box. I wasn't just going to leave just because of that. And I was like, I've overcome so much with diabetes, and as a player, I'm confident in like my work ethic and my attitude and what I bring to the table. So I was like, a new coach isn't gonna, like, I'll just roll with it. Like that'll be its own thing, but it is something that like definitely changed things for me, because you're going to college in itself is scary. Going to a new city, like we're from a small, like Louisville, Kentucky, like
everyone knows each other.
Yeah, and then going to Atlanta, Georgia, where it's like completely different. Like I was excited, but I didn't necessarily know what I was getting into. So yeah, there's a lot of learning there.
Yeah. Were your teammates kind of like, what are you doing, or how did they take it?
So one of my Kiva teammates, London Ackerman, she was there with me. So that was something that was like, okay, at least I'll have her. And then one of my best friends, Sydney Wilson, we both committed sophomore year. So we were friends that whole time too. We had a relationship going into Georgia Tech. So like I had two people at least on the team who knew me and understood and stuff like that. And then again, just like going to like a new school and different things like that, like you have to educate people, and like definitely in college, especially with the people that you live with and like travel with all the time, and like having an athletic staff too, of like your trainers and all that stuff, like it was good. It's a learning experience for everyone. Like even until my senior year, we were still learning new things, which is crazy, but yeah.
Wow. Did anybody like see you check your blood pressure, or not blood sugar, and wonder what was going on, or ask if you're okay, or like think something was wrong?
Yeah. Very quickly, my whole coaching staff, team, like very quickly, everyone understood, because I check my blood about like 12 times a day. Like it's, especially as an athlete, like you wake up before you eat, after you eat, before you practice, during practice, after practice, like it's all the time, you know? So they got used to it very quickly, but I know like during games and stuff, sometimes you would see people kind of like, you know, what's going on? And then people would ask you after the game, like, hey, I saw you during the game doing this. What was that about? You know? So I definitely had to kind of like step up and own that part of me and be like, yeah, I have type 1 diabetes and blah, 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 blah. Whereas in high school, I was still kind of not fighting it, but like hiding it. Like I would go to the bathroom to check my blood. Like I was embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to see it, because like in my eyes, I'm like, well, that's just weak. Like I feel like that's weak of me. Like people don't want to see that. It's weird. It's gross, because again, being diagnosed at 7, you grow up with kids who are brutal, you know, and they're like, ew, that's so gross, look at her. Like you give yourself a shot and maybe you're bleeding a little bit. That's so, like, she's bleeding, da da da. So it's definitely something that I've grown a ton with, but in college you're just kind of like thrown in there, and you have to kind of just be like, this is me, I can't change it, get used to it.
100%. Oh my gosh, like that's so college, because everyone's from all different parts of the country, or even the world. I don't know if you have foreign students, but you really have to tell people like, this is where I'm from, this is who I am. Like I had the same thing at GW, and I was like, no, like this is me. It's not like a GW kind of thing, like it's a me thing. So that's crazy. So then how did you end up going overseas?
That in itself was another crazy thing. So 4 years at Georgia Tech, lots of ups and downs with volleyball and diabetes, all that stuff. And like by senior year, I was like, I am done with volleyball. I'm ready for my new chapter in life. Like this is over. Excited for new things.
Yeah.
And
were you an ACC player?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was done. I was burnt out. Which
she was really good. For those of you listening,
I was ready for the next chapter. But it's funny because early on in college, this agency Mother Model found me my freshman year. Yeah, but I didn't have modeling experience prior to playing in college, so I couldn't actually model with them. And I remember going to compliance being like, hey, they want to work with me, whatever, and they were like, well, you can't because of A, B, and C, and so the whole NCAA, you can't do anything for your image, whatever. But we would do test shoots every Christmas just to like keep the connect, keep kind of like working, like because modeling's
building your portfolio and see if you can do it afterwards.
Yeah, and so after volleyball, that was the plan. I was like, done with volleyball, I'm gonna model full time. The plan was to move to New York and like just do that full time. Like that was my dream. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And again, during volleyball, like my body was bigger. Like I was, very strong and like very like thick. And after the season, looking back, low key, I think I was a little depressed about a lot of different things going on, and I lost a lot of weight. And the agency I was going to go see in New York before we went up there was, they were like, well, send me your measurements. And they'd gone down. Like I had lost a ton of weight. Yeah. And they were like, you're no longer what we're looking for. Good luck. And so I'm sitting at home, like I didn't get a job. I didn't pursue playing overseas. I was sitting at home, like I put all my eggs in one basket. Yeah. And now that basket's gone. Like, what do I do? And it's funny because I was sitting at home, literally up in my room, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm a failure. Like, I can't do anything. And then I get a message on Facebook from the coach in England and was like, hey, like, do you, this is, I know this is off the wall, but we need an outside hitter. Like, do you want to come to England, get your master's degree and play volleyball? And I was like, well, let me check my schedule. I got nothing. Like, let's do this.
Nothing.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, it's only upside with this, I guess. So I jumped into that. And that was another thing too with like diabetes. I was that's why I didn't pursue playing professional volleyball, because I was like, how am I going to go play in another country? Like, I have insurance here. I don't know what the deal is over there. I don't know what's going to happen if I don't have insulin or if this happened. Like, that's so true. You're literally by yourself without a support system. So that scared me. But talking to that coach, she was like, yeah, we got free healthcare over here, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what?
In England?
Yes.
That's nice.
England, like all of Europe. I was like, oh, like that definitely changed things for me. I was like, okay, let's do it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And you guys killed it. Didn't you guys win your league?
Yeah, we won so I played in 3 different professional leagues in England. So there's like the Bucks League, which is like the university league. We national champions for that. We won the Super League, which is the pro league, and then I won a sand volleyball
national title. Sand volleyball over there?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, and I won, so that's pretty cool. Okay.
So I won 3 national titles over there. So I was like, woohoo!
Wait, that's insane. So then how did you end up in France?
Playing in England, a coach saw me and reached out and was like, hey, well, not a coach, an agent was like, hey, do you want to sign with me? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, sure, whatever. Like, I don't know. I've been lucky with things. I know it's not like that with other people, but I was just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants. Like, let's see what happens. It worked for me before, whatever. So he was really, really good. He asked me kind of, what countries would you want to play in? And like I had taken a lot of trips to France while I was in England, and I loved it, and I was like, I want to go to France. Like, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful, great food. I was like, yeah, whatever. So that's how I got to France.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so what about the language barrier?
Oh my goodness, that was another thing. Because like I took Spanish in high school, and I did a mission trip to Nicaragua. I took Spanish in college. I was like, oh yeah, I can learn languages, and Spanish and French are similar.
Are they?
No, it is not. They are not similar. So that was a complete learning curve, because I lived in this tiny, tiny little town in France.
Oh, wow.
Like, there was no one my age. It was either like really, really old people or like young kids.
Oh.
And so
what part was it?
It's called Saint-Dié, and so it's on the border of Germany, Switzerland, and on the border of Germany and Switzerland.
Okay.
So it's a very, very small. It's a beautiful little city.
Yeah.
Great little support system for like the volleyball there and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
But yeah, definitely hard to A, make friends because there's no one there my age, but 2, like, no one there speaks English. It's such a little remote city that like even going to the grocery store, I'm like, what is this?
So what about your coach? Like, were you just like deer eyes looking at him the whole time?
He spoke English, which is good, and he spoke really, really good English. That's the reason we did like a FaceTime before I even committed there, because I was like, I have diabetes, I have this going on, like I needed to make sure if I was going to go to a country I don't speak the language, like am I going to be able to survive, am I going to be okay? So he spoke English, but again,
sometimes you forgot.
And like there's like one time in practice we were doing this drill where he wanted us to not hit to the line. And he's like, don't hit to the line, but he's saying it in French, but I'm like looking at like his intensity of what he's saying. He's like and I'm like, okay, we're hitting it to the line. Like, he wants us to hit line. So I go up, I like beam it line, and he like stops the drill and is like and I'm like, oh, don't hit there. Okay, cool.
Like, okay,
I got it.
I can just like perfectly picture some coaches like flipping out.
Yes, and he was like that. Like Kiva.
Yeah,
that's
and they're like
what he
super
was.
Passionate about it. They are like passionate in your face if you do something wrong too.
And especially French culture, because like in France, they go crazy. Like girls are like kicking balls across the court. Like I've never seen anything in my life like that. I'm like, girl, if we did this at Kiva, you would be running to the end of the day. Like,
so what is it like? They're just really expressive with everything?
They're very, very passionate, but they're also like, I don't think our ideal, like I don't think US culture and French culture really go together very well, because we are all about like, especially with volleyball, like it's okay to make a mistake. Like just like next ball focused. Learn from it, next ball focused. Or if she made a bad pass, I'm gonna better the ball for her. You know, like for the next person who's gonna touch the ball. Like everything is like moving forward. In France, it's like if it wasn't a good pass, like screw you, like the play's over, like why did you do that? You have one job. Like it's very like if you're not the best, you're the worst. And if you are the best, everyone else around you is gonna be like envious of it. Like they want to steal that from you, even if you're a teammate. Like it to me, I'm like, I don't
like a whole different level of competitiveness.
Like I remember the weirdest stuff, like me and the libero didn't really have the best relationship, which never made sense to me, because I'm like, we are completely different positions. We're not competing for anything.
He doesn't like verbally say anything because he spoke a different language. But just like the body language you could read and it was not there. And I would just be like, I don't speak your, and she spoke English too, so I'm like, I don't speak your language. Why are you yelling at me in French? Like, there's a lot of things that I was like, I don't know what's going on. But either way, you learn from it. You learn how to handle situations. And it's all a learning process. So are you thinking about going back?
No. I was thinking about that like throughout playing in France too, just because in England it was different, because I was getting my master's degree. I was in an English speaking country. Like I could balance my life out a lot better, because it wasn't just volleyball. Like I could take a mental break and like go study, take a mental break and go out with friends. Like in France, just playing volleyball is very, very like mentally it's tough, just because it's like I've always had to kind of like compartmentalize and like put myself in different places,
like balance things.
And so that was hard, and like the season there is a lot longer. I think it's a full 10 months. Like that's a lot on your body, and even like with diabetes, like I've never played at that level for that long. Like it was comparable to playing at Georgia Tech. Like France is very, very good at volleyball. But I've never had to do that for that long.
Because volleyball season's what, like 5 months? Like August, September. I think it ends in November.
So it's like I'm able to do it, but for that long, it's not that I can't. It's just I think
taxing.
And I want to be able to walk away with it without any like major injuries and stuff. And like I've always been very lucky with that, and I've never had anything. But there, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like my arm's gonna fall off. You know? Because I'm
struggling. So do you feel like since the quarantine happened, you didn't really get to finish out the way you wanted?
Yes and no. By Christmas time, I was kind of already like
over it.
In a way, when we came back, like January was still pretty refreshing, because we had a couple more games to make it to like the playoffs, which in US terms that would be like you play all season and then you make it to the playoffs and you're automatically in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA. Like,
Yes.
it's so exciting.
Yeah.
And so when we came back in January, we still had a few more games. We made it to the playoffs. Like, we were a team that, like, probably shouldn't have, but, like, we just, like, fought through it. Like, we made it. And
Heck
it was,
yeah.
and so it was a big celebration. And we had, like, I think 3 weeks off before the playoffs started. So that was really cool to travel and stuff. But I don't know, by the time the game started coming back and stuff, I was missing family.
Yeah.
I had gotten sick. Low-key, I feel like I got corona when I was there because it was like during all that time. But
I think everyone low-key did. I felt like I was sick. I was like going to hug all these kids in these schools. I was like,
yeah. But also, like, being overseas, it's really cool to explore and, like, see things and meet new people, but you miss so much at home. And, like, there was a lot of things that I was missing at home that, like, I didn't feel right about it. And, like, you know, one of our closest coaches passed away, and, like, things like that. And, like, I want to be, if I'm going to be anywhere, like, I want to be close to people that I love and who love me. And, like, when you're in another country, you make friends and stuff. Yeah. But in a sense, like, it's not like you're going to see them after. Yeah. And so it's hard for that. And then just seeing things over there, I want to share that with someone. I think we're meant to, like, share things with people.
As
like,
humans, like, it's all about interacting with other people and human connection.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's so many studies about people being locked up in isolated rooms and how they come out so mentally damaged and messed up because they don't have that social interaction that humans literally need. Yeah.
So I was definitely missing that. And okay, the other thing is, so there's 2 Americans on the team. Me and my friend Molly.
I was supposed to ask that.
Yeah, she owns her own business, Coast Easy. Check her out. She's a boss.
What is it?
It's like a little clothing line, and she's a graphic designer and does all that stuff. So we did some photo shoots. Very cool. But so me and her, like, we had each other, and we had the same kind of, like, we want to start family. Right. We live parallel lives. Literally, she has, like, 6 people in her family, 6 people in my family. Like, we clicked very well. Yeah. And so we shared those struggles together, and that was really good. But we were both kind of like, we missed that love, you know? And we didn't even live in the same apartment. We lived across town from each other, which was hard.
So not everyone lived together?
I lived with one of my teammates, but we lived on the other side of town, and everyone else lived in an apartment on the other side. So, like, there was
just not enough room in the other apartment?
I don't know. I don't really know why they chose to do it. It didn't make sense to me. I'm like, you should probably put the foreigners together at least, because my roommate did not speak English. Oh, wow. So, like, the day-to-day, there would be days where I just, like, it would go all the way until practice time, and I wouldn't even have spoken to anyone. Yeah. And, like, with the time difference, like, it's not like I could just wake up and talk to my family. I usually couldn't talk to them until the evenings anyways. Yeah. So, like, just literally going a whole day without speaking to someone, that's hard. Yeah. And I'm like, I need to get home. Yeah. Practice my English.
Practice my English. Did you come back and you were like,
I wanted to talk all the time. All the time. Jacqueline's like, shut up. I'm like, no, listen to me.
This is great. You understand.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. Okay, so then what's next? So you don't plan on going back. So what do you plan on trying to do in the future?
Yeah, I'm job hunting right now. So I'm trying to figure that out, which is, it's hard because of, you know, coronavirus and all that. Yeah. And it's a little, like, tough too, because I thought I would have this figured out before I even came home. Like, I thought I would be coming home and, like, walking into a job almost. Like, because I was job hunting when I was in France. Okay. But then all this stuff happens and it's like, well, what now? And so I'm definitely job searching, so if anyone wants to hire me.
Well, tell everybody what you major in.
So I got my bachelor's in marketing. I went to Georgia Institute of Technology, business school. Okay. And then I got my master's degree from Durham University in England, and I got that in entrepreneurship. So,
Do you have any ideas running through your head that you might want to attack?
Yeah, I have a journal of, like, just, like, business ideas, and it's funny because I feel like I could be really well in a lot of different areas, but it's like I want to be able to bring these together in, like,
a unique way.
Yeah, and I don't think I've really, like, clicked with, like, what that thing is yet. Yeah. But I definitely have a lot of ideas that I'm like, this could go somewhere, this could go somewhere, but at this point I'm like, I need to get some experience and, like, just work with people and kind of see what's out there.
So what is your ideal kind of job situation?
I'm looking at consulting because I'm really good at problem solving. I'm really good with numbers, you know, diabetes.
Yeah.
And I'm also really, really good at speaking to people, very like relationship based, which also I could be good at sales. So I'm kind of looking at those two right now because I think I could do really well.
Dude, why don't you get a job from this? Everybody, Empire Podcast.
But yeah.
Gosh, that's so cool. So I want to go back to diabetes. So did you feel like you kind of became an advocate when you were in college for it? Because I saw you had something on ESPN about it, which was so cool. And you were like talking, you're like, I always dreamed about being on ESPN and here I am.
I know. Yeah, so again, with my mom being such a rock for me growing up. So JDRF is Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and we got involved with that early on. And when I was, how old was I? 11 years old. I wrote a letter to Congress kind of explaining my story of what's going on and stuff. And that was a really critical year for diabetes because there's a special diabetes bill and it was about to expire. And basically what this bill does is the government is, sets aside money to look for a cure for this because, it affects so many people. Like you need that to be able to progress in the disease and like figure out what's going on.
Right.
And that bill was about to expire that year. So I wrote a letter to Congress and I was selected to be the representative for Kentucky.
What? At 11 years old?
Yeah. And
you were selected as the representative. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm riding it. That's cool.
So I went to Washington, D.C. and me and I think there was 1 or 2 delegates from each state. And then from 7 other countries. We all came to Congress and people were like sharing their stories and different things like that. And that's how I got really into it because I'm like, whoa, it's not just me with it. It's like all these people from all these different like places. Like I remember meeting this boy from Australia and I'm like, what? Like this is so cool. So yeah, that was like my earliest thing with it. But at the time, so Mitch McConnell was the majority leader at the time, I think. And I remember again, 11 years old, I don't know anything about anything.
Right.
And everyone's like, he's the second most important, like most powerful man in the world right now. Like, where's that Kentucky delegate? We need her to talk to him, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, like just enjoying.
Where's that Kentucky delegate?
I remember there were like different events each day. And we were going to, I think like the big lawn or whatever for like this singing thing.
At the White House.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember they were on the walkie-talkies, I think. I don't know. They're like, where's the Kentucky delegate? Like, they're trying to find me. They find me. They put me on this golf cart. We go to the White House. We go to, and again, this is after 9/11. And so, like, you can't get into
security.
Yeah. But they put me on the golf cart and, like, rode me away. And we went into this, like, underground tunnel, which is crazy because I'm like, literally no one can get to where I was. Like, that's so cool. And we went underground. I don't know exactly where it was. I just know we went underground. We went in this place that no one's allowed. And Mitch McConnell was on the floor of Congress speaking at the time. Like, he was out there doing his thing. Like, not even anything to do with diabetes. He called a pause. I don't know what you call that in court. It was like, I don't know. But he called a pause, came out, met me in this room, and was like, I read your letter because he was our congressman, you know? And so he read my letter. He was like, I know your story, and I just want to tell you something. I grew up with polio. I grew up with a disease where there wasn't a cure, and it, kind of was a death sentence. And I'm going to sign this bill, and we're going to get this passed because I want you to be able to say, I had type 1 diabetes before there was a cure. Like, I'm able to say I had polio before there was a cure. And I just remember being like, maybe it is possible. Because when you're diagnosed, everyone's always like, there's going to be a cure, there's going to be a cure. And, year goes by, and, it fades. You're like, we'll see. But when he told me that, I was like, maybe there's hope. Like, they cure polio. Maybe they can cure diabetes.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. I got chills when you said that.
Yeah. So he signed the bill. He was the first one to sign it. Everyone else signed it. We got the bill passed. So that was a big, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then another, like, big moment for me when I was there is, again, they had all these different events for all the kids, and again, I'm like super tall. I was like 5'7" at the time. I'm 11 years old, huge, played basketball, and they had this ESPN panel, and it was like different professional athletes with type 1 diabetes, and I remember being so excited. I think it was Adam Morrison, but he was a basketball player with type 1 diabetes. We all got to write a question, like, if you could go ask somebody, who would it be and what's your question?
Right.
And I had a question for Adam Morrison, and I was like, you know, if your blood sugar goes low during a game, do you have a signal with your coach? Like, how do you let them know? And the ESPN people read it, and they were like, this is such a good question. I want you to come up, and I want you to ask all of them. So I got to go up, and it's like these two ESPN guys. It's the whole ESPN thing, and I'm so excited. I'm like this little girl, like, oh my gosh. And so I asked them, and each one, you know, talked about their story and like how they communicate to their coach and how they prepare for games and stuff like that. And the reporters pulled me aside and were like, how old are you? I'm like, 11. You know, this giant 11-year-old should not be as tall as I was.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, we're going to be interviewing you on ESPN one day. And I was like, maybe I could. Like, maybe I could, you know, get to play in college, get to play professional. Who knows? And again, I had an athletic family, but once I got diabetes, I kind of wrote it off. Like, this is going to stop me and whatever. Like, I didn't really have friends with diabetes growing up. Like, that was my first experience, seeing all those people and meeting all those people. So for me, I'm like, oh, they said it, maybe it could happen. Like,
so do you have a network now of other people with diabetes, like a community almost? Yeah,
so from that, I met a lot of people through JDRF, and then the online community is growing so much. So there's diabetics doing things, and like this guy, Rob Howe, who runs like the biggest online platform for type 1 diabetes. I actually just did a podcast with him as well, but I've met a lot of people literally just from him and like from his, like all the social media platforms that he has. And like, it's funny because just literally, I just changed it in my bio. It said type 1 diabetes, and like so many people like will message me and be like, oh my gosh, I have diabetes and I play volleyball, or I have diabetes and I swim. And like, there's like a lot of people that reach out and stuff. And I love it so much because growing up, I didn't have that. Like social media was not a thing. Like, so I'm definitely very like grateful for that and being able to like be mature about it. And like back in the day, I wouldn't have spoken this well about like what goes on through the day to day, and it's pretty like scared about how to word things and how to like not sound weak and not sound you know, stupid or whatever. And I'm definitely grateful that there's an online presence and there's a whole community of people like willing to talk to you and like share these things. And like we're all different in how we deal with diabetes, and we're all different in like what we go through, but just being able to talk to people, like it's because mentally and it's so good.
Talking's amazing. So knowing all that you know now, like meeting the people, what would you go back and say to your 7-year-old self?
I think I would have just said like, you're gonna be okay.
Like
I don't think I could have given myself a piece of advice, because I just would have been like, whatever. Like I wouldn't have listened to myself. But I think just knowing like you're gonna be okay and you're gonna be able to do anything, because that's what I was most scared about. Just not being able to play a sport at the highest level, because like even just like being recruited and stuff, I was so scared to tell coaches, because in my mind I'm like, well, if it's between me and this girl and I have diabetes and she doesn't, they're gonna pick her every time. Like the whole recruiting process, I wouldn't even tell coaches until like I was on their campus taking a visit. And like you can't hide it at that point, you know? And so then it would be like, hey, I have type 1 diabetes, I've had it for this long. And like that was always, if somebody didn't offer me a scholarship or different things like that, in the back of my head, it's because of diabetes. If I didn't have diabetes, this wouldn't happen. Which is like the wrong way to look at things, because with diabetes, I have so much more discipline and like just, there's so much more that I gain from it than I think I ever lose.
So going back now, I guess, to the recruiting process, like, would you have used it as like a tool to show that you're disciplined and dedicated, or still probably would have hit it?
I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know, because everything's changing now.
It really is.
Like, in a sense, I think being outspoken about it and being like a face for it could be a good thing, but I think at the end of the day, I would have just been more open about it and kind of like honest with like the day-to-day, because even when I was telling coaches, it was, yeah, I'm perfectly fine, like I never have problems, like it's never been a problem in a game, and like
trying to like reassure them and like pat them down, because people that don't know are probably like, oh my gosh, like what is she doing, what's going on, were you ever on a visit and you like started, you probably had to tell them that you had diabetes before you were just like checking your insulin? I mean, they would see me check my blood and stuff, and then again,
I know how to kind of like mask things. Like most of the time, people wouldn't even notice me checking my blood.
Yeah.
Or if I'm eating a granola bar or drinking a juice, it's not really like a red flag.
Right.
So like I would just kind of silently treat things.
Yeah.
But reassuring them, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I know what I'm feeling. I can kind of take care of myself. So
yeah, that's important. Okay, we're about to end it, and I always like asking my guests what their favorite quote is.
Favorite quote.
Why.
Okay, Maya Angelou.
Wow. She's on it. She's ready.
This is my favorite quote. People will forget what you said to them. People will forget what you did to them, but people will never forget the way that you made them feel. And I've carried that through my whole life because I want people to look at me and like, you don't have to remember anything about me, but if I made you feel good, that's all I could ask for, you know? Like, I think there's a lot of negativity and things like that going on in this world, but like, if you can be someone that like is kind of like a sunlight for that person and they have good memories of you and stuff, like, I think that goes a long way.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, you were amazing. Okay, guys. You know the drill. Oh, this has my MacBook thing up.
But yeah, if you guys want to reach out, say anything, message me.
Say anything.
I'm here.
But yeah, thanks for watching, viewing, subscribing. Click that 5-star button.